the light in the storm. In a small town called Valle Esperanza, there lived Andrés, a man known for his hard work and dedication to his family. Since he was young, Andrés had learned that life wasn't easy, but that effort and perseverance could overcome any obstacle. His father, a wise and serene man, taught him the art of carpentry from childhood. Every afternoon, his father's workshop would fill with the sound of the hammer and axe, tools that seemed to come to life in the hands of the experienced man. Andrés, watching closely, learned that every piece of wood, no matter how simple it seemed, had a purpose. With patience, love, and dedication, it could be transformed into something beautiful, something useful, something that would endure. Over time, Andrés left the family home to open his own workshop. He was young, but the wisdom he had received from his father had made him a man of great character and skill. Through hard work, determination, and the blessing of his faith, his workshop became one of the most well-known in the village. Customers came from all over, drawn by the quality and attention to detail with which Andrés worked the wood. His reputation as an honest and hard-working man allowed him to earn the trust of the community. His workshop wasn't just a place of work, but also a refuge for those who needed advice, a moment of peace, or simply someone to listen. Life seemed to smile on Andrés, and he felt that nothing could take away the peace he had built through hard work. But, as often happens, difficulties began to come unexpectedly. First, there was a slight decrease in the number of customers. Then debts began to pile up. Despite his efforts to keep the workshop afloat, times were changing. New carpentry techniques and cheaper materials flooded the market, and large stores began offering mass-produced furniture at lower prices. The competition was fierce, and Andrés couldn't compete with those prices. Each passing day, he felt more overwhelmed. His faith, which had always been his refuge, began to waver, and sleepless nights became more frequent. Andrés would sit alone in his workshop, staring at the unfinished pieces, while the feeling of failure consumed him. Moreover, his relationship with his eldest son, Daniel, was beginning to deteriorate. Since reaching adolescence, Daniel had distanced himself from the family and the church. Conversations between father and son became more tense, and arguments more frequent. Andrés didn't understand what had happened, how his son, who had always been so devout and close to God, had turned away from the faith. He tried to talk to him, but Daniel, with his defiant look and evasive answers, shut down every attempt at connection. Mariana, Andrés' wife, tried to stay strong. She saw what was happening with her husband and son, but she also felt powerless. The days passed, and the tension at home grew. The atmosphere had become heavy, filled with silences and sad glances. Mariana didn't know how to help her husband regain his faith or how to save her relationship with her son. In the darkness of the night, she often prayed alone, asking God to give them the strength to get through those difficult times. One day, as Andrés was closing the doors of his workshop, an old man appeared at the threshold. The sky was cloudy, and the rain had begun to fall heavily. The man, dressed in simple, soaked clothes, had a serene expression. He approached Andrés, who observed him for a moment, uncertain. However, the old man smiled warmly at him, as if he already knew him. "Good afternoon, young man," said the old man in a soft voice. "It looks like the storm is coming strong." Andrés sighed, feeling the weight of the storm that was not only falling from the sky but also in his life. "That's right," he replied as he dried his hands with a rag. "And not only the one from the sky, but also the one in my life." The old man sat in the chair that Andrés offered him, accepted a cup of hot tea, and began to observe him in silence. The peace that emanated from the man was like a balm to Andrés, who, despite his desperation, couldn't help but feel drawn to his presence. After a while, the old man broke the silence. God never leaves his children alone in the storm. Sometimes, when it's darkest, his light shines the brightest. The old man's words reached Andrés like a whisper in the midst of the noise in his mind. For years, he had held onto his faith firmly, but now he felt lost, as if he could no longer find the light that had always guided him. "I know," said Andrés with a broken voice, "but I feel like my faith is fading. Everything is going wrong, and I see no way out." The old man, without hurry, took a small candle from his bag and lit it with a match. The flame flickered softly, but in the dim light of the workshop, it seemed like a powerful light. The old man placed it on the table, looking at Andrés with an intensity that made him feel vulnerable. "Look at this light," he said, watching the flame dance gently. "It's small, but in the darkness, it can guide you. That's faith. No matter how weak you think it is, if you protect it and nourish it with prayer and trust, it will never go out." Andrés stared at the candle, letting the old man's words sink deeply into his heart. He remembered all the times he had felt God's presence at his side in moments of desperation. He remembered the moments of prayer, the small signs that had always guided him. In that instant, something inside him began to change. Maybe his faith could still be saved. The old man, after a long silence, stood up and walked over to Andrés. He placed a hand on his shoulder with firmness and kindness, like a father guiding his son. "God is already working in your life, even if you can't see it. Trust him." With those words, the old man left in the rain, disappearing quickly into the fog that was beginning to envelop the town. Andrés stayed there, staring at the candle, with a strange feeling in his chest. Something had ignited within him, a spark he hadn't felt in a long time. That night, for the first time in a long time, Andrés prayed with more fervor than ever. He knelt, putting his faith back in God's hands, asking for strength to face whatever came next. In his prayer, he also asked for his son, his marriage, and his workshop. He asked for signs, answers, a way out of the storm that seemed endless. The next morning, when he woke up, something had changed in him. He felt a deep peace, as if he had finally let go of the weight of his doubts. He decided to act with renewed confidence. He went to the bank to reorganize his debts, sought advice on how to improve his business, and with a heart full of hope, he went to speak with his son. The meeting with Daniel wasn't easy. The words were still difficult to find, but Andrés approached him with unwavering love, without judgment, only listening. During that conversation, Andrés remembered what he had always believed. That faith is something that isn't imposed but shared with love and patience. And little by little, Daniel began to see something different in his father. The light of faith that Andrés had regained began to reflect on him, and over time, Daniel also found his way back to the church and the family. Andrés' workshop began to fill up with customers again. The community supported him, and with each new piece of wood, his faith grew stronger. The workshop was no longer just a place of work. It had become a place of healing, a refuge where hope was renewed. Years later, Andrés, now older, found himself sharing his story with the young people in the village. He told them about the small candle that had illuminated his life in his darkest moment and how faith, even when weak, never goes out if cared for with love and devotion. And so, Andrés' story became a legend in Valle Esperanza, passed down from generation to generation, reminding everyone that the light of faith will always shine, even in the fiercest storm.